Hi, my name's Tim Campbell, founder of the Bright Ideas Trust, first winner of the BBC show Apprentice and board advisor to the amazing startup Humaniq. I started mainstream education in the UK, eventually going on to get a degree in psychology and going to London School of Business and receiving a certificate in financial literacy. So I've had a really interesting career. Not only did I start off in the public sector, but I used to work on Transport for London. So a lot of my time was spent advising and telling people how to get around the network in the most efficient and safe way. But that actually built into me this love of customer interaction and delighting people with the needs that they particularly have. So after going through a mainstream career, selling my soul on television, going through a television show called The Apprentice and eventually winning, I actually set up an organisation called Bright Ideas Trust, which had at its heart to empower people and to democratise access to information about how to start up a business. Because although I'd been successful starting up my own business and working for a very successful entrepreneur, there were a lot of other people just like me who didn't have access to the information, the knowledge or the money to be able to do the same thing. And in order to democratise that, I wanted to give everybody free access to that. And that's what the Bright Ideas Trust does. So we're really in a proud position to have invested in over 250 businesses, all based in London, all amongst young people who have great ideas and great talent to take them forward. I think for anybody thinking about starting a business, the first thing I'd say is take a time to think, is this really for you? Because actually, it's not easy. It's a road less travelled for a reason. There are a lot of people who have great ambitions, and with some great ambassadors out there for business, like the founders of some of the tech companies recently, everybody wants to think, well, I might as well start a tech business. But the reality is that it's incredibly difficult to get an idea that is viable and actually going to delight customers in some way, shape or form. So the first thing is really think hard. Have you got something that's of value? Do you know enough about it? And can you actually bring it to life? And if you have those things, that's the best place to start. Do your research, get the idea off and surround yourself with people who actually believe in what you're trying to do. For me, being involved in the blockchain sector is incredibly exciting. Being a board advisor to Humaniq, which has at its heart to democratise access to financial products and services, really plays true to everything that I actually passionately believed. When you hear that there are over 2 billion individuals in the world who don't have access to financial services and aren't able to trade, aren't able to exchange money, aren't able to purchase things because they don't have access to it, it really saddens me. But the power of blockchain and technology that underpins it in terms of the distributed ledger is incredibly exciting. Because we're preventing individuals from being excluded, we're actually facilitating the access to the products and services, and we're empowering people to live much more wholesome lives. I think it's really interesting that we have massive corporations who have grown to huge sizes and changed the way that things are done. Most individuals watching this will be access to a computer or a terminal or some form of technological gadget in their mobile phone. There are a huge amount of people who don't still have access to that. And although we might sit and think that the world is getting better, actually the gap between those who have and those who don't is actually broadening. And as well as people being very focused on actually becoming more wealthy, there are a group of what I would call social entrepreneurs or venture philanthropists who are using the power of business to level out the access to wealth in this world amongst those who don't have it. And for me, that's an exciting thing, and that's only accelerating. With the advances in technology, the advances in access to capital, there are more opportunities to level out the playing field to make sure that more people have access to the wealth that's in this world, because there's more than enough to go around. So my vision for Humaniq is one that's shared by the founders and the chief executive and the management team, which is all about making sure that those that we touch with the Humaniq product and services are able to be involved in the world of financial literacy. Not only is it about providing access to banking, but it's actually about education as well. So my vision in the short term is that we will disrupt the banking system to be able to show that it's not only big institutions that are able to be involved in financial services, and the power of technology is being used for good, being able to bring those involved. Over the longer term, I think what we're going to have is much bigger conversations with countries about what we are doing to make sure that people in our communities are treated fairly and equally. I think there are two sides to technology, and there is a more ominous side and there's a really overwhelming joyous side. I'm more on the joyous side. It will outweigh some of the negative potential implications of technology, in that I think more people will be empowered by what technology is going to bring in the future. But it does require custodians who have integrity to be involved in that conversation. And that means we have to do much more about diversifying those who are actually participating in the world of wealth creation. And for me, that's what Humaniq has the potential to start the conversation, by getting more people who are outside of the normal group of individuals who actually get involved, and actually bringing that integrity by bringing more different people who have diversity of thought and emphasis. I think everybody in the world has to be more understanding of what the potential of blockchain is going to bring to our environments. For anybody watching this, they'll have understood around the media. And for the media, for most people, that would have constituted a newspaper, something they can pick up and physically read. And that progressed into the internet and being able to see information via search engines in terms of where you are. Now, most people think that that is free and accessible to all, but the reality is that that is now controlled by many big institutions and organisations who are in control of what information gets shared with individuals in different places. What I think the power of blockchain is bringing is a way to break down those barriers to entry, which have been restrictive of people who aren't in those big organisations or connected, being able to get access to information and intelligence. And blockchain is actually making that open for everybody. It's created a community that is built on technology, one, but more importantly, trust. Because essentially the whole underpinning emphasis of blockchain and its technology is that everything is open and visible to all, and it's about trust. And for me, that has to be the underpinning of business, because that's what excited me about business when we started in the first place. And with the work of Humaniq and the team that's surrounding, we are going to democratise the access to that information and really force the issue of trust being talked about when you talk about business. Well, if I was in the privileged position of being in Theresa May's seat and being Prime Minister of the day, I'd do a huge amount to get more people who have accumulated a lot of wealth in the last 10 or 15 years, and not necessarily through anything other than owning a property or being in the right place at the right time, and give them more permission by flexing the tax laws to get them more involved in investing in more startup businesses. One of the biggest issues that we find talking to lots of people who are thinking about starting up their business is access to capital. And in addition to that, access to mentors and advisors who have the information to pass on. Because if you've got a great idea but no one in your community or peer group has ever done it, it can be really daunting to start out. But if we had a tax system that was incentivising individuals to use their wealth to make investments, think of an EIS scheme on GM modified products, so it's going massive, where we got more people to think about investing in startup companies and actually thinking about the risk associated with that. It's probably a better place to be than just leaving your money under a mattress. Then actually would bring people with knowledge and experience from the real world to follow their money, to not only provide capital, but to provide access to information that they bring along with their money as well. And I think that could really be transformational in actually encouraging more people to come forward with more ideas that are going to help people in their communities and actually generate more wealth, because they'll be bringing more ideas. The reality is that you can't leave economic development in the hands of the few. And the power of blockchain, it puts the emphasis of economic development in the hands of the many. And that's the power. The power of the crowd, underpinned with trust, is the value that blockchain brings to the table, and it's exactly why Humaniq is potentially the disruptive element in wealth creation of the future, and why I'm really proud to be part of the board. I think my most enjoyable business experience has been working with young entrepreneurs who haven't had the confidence to start up their own businesses, but actually with a little bit of assistance, have gone on to create inspirational businesses themselves. So for example, we had two guys from Hackney who wanted to start a importing business, bringing fancy dressed all-in-one animal costumes. And when they brought the idea, I looked at them and think, are you really sure you want to do this? But they convinced me through their passion for the idea, the experience they've had, and the demonstrator that they've brought along with them, that they knew what they were talking about. So with a very relatively small amount of money, we invested into their company, and now they have sold that business for, after a small investment of about 1,500 UK pounds, they sold that business for in excess of £1 million afterwards. So a small example of what a little bit of effort and a little bit of assistance can do to help people to create wealth around things that they're passionate about. So those examples of working with young entrepreneurs particularly and inspiring them to start up their own businesses is really, really important. Another one for me is I got to meet one of my best friends through the whole experience. So Bright Ideas Trust, we run a number of initiatives where we get people to network. The power of networking, I think, is really important. We brought together a group of individuals, and I met a young man called Darian who was there at the event, and we got on like a house on fire. Off the back of that, we've gone on to start our own businesses, doing social media marketing, and also working together as part of the Humaniq team. So it's important that people understand you never know where the dots are going to add up and be connected. And actually, for those who have access to capital, wealth and experience, you have to, the responsibility is on you to get out there and find a way to share that with many, because you never know where that's going to end up. Yes, some things might not go as well as they can, but the power for me is making the connections and seeing them actually come to fruition. I think for me, if I was to go back in time and bring someone back around the mythical dinner table, I think Muhammad Ali would have to be one of the top ones for me, because I'm a huge boxing fan. But Muhammad Ali was much more than just a boxer. He was an ambassador for a whole movement of individuals, particularly those who were from Africa, around having confidence and belief in themselves. And that was manifested through his sporting activity, but actually what he did around assisting individuals to have confidence in their communities was actually as important, if not more so. He understood the power of media, he understood the power of branding, and he used that for good around empowering a community that didn't have a lot of confidence, but saw him as a role model, and he lived up to his title by sharing experiences and wealth with others. Yes, he had some flaws. Who doesn't? We've all got those. Throw your stones in your glass houses if you're innocent. But for me, he was really focused on making sure that people who were like him were going to be able to be in a better position than he was when he first started. That would be a very interesting conversation. I'm much more of life through experiences. I love going out and actually doing things in the real world. However, I do see the power and the value in books and education. So for me, anyone who's written about a real life experience that they've personally experienced, that's really interesting to actually go. So I love biographies. I love going out and hearing people's stories. But I would put a caveat on that, in that I think it's interesting to read about people's experiences, but you have to understand that's their life story. Your story is going to be very different. When we're thinking about what we're doing with Humaniq, for example, we've got lots of people on our board, our advisory group, etc., who have had fantastic careers. But every single one of us has been reticent to put our own personal stories to the forefront, because we are here about creating a platform that allows individuals to create their own stories. So through our experiences, and through the experiences that you might read through books of biographies of individuals, it's brilliant to be able to pick up tips and tricks which might have worked for those. But the interesting thing I've always taken away from the businesses that we've worked with, the examples and case studies that we've seen through Humaniq and the work that we've done with Bright Ideas Trust, is that it's important that you've got to create your own lane. You've got to make your own story. Yes, use the information, the advice and guidance, but you have to go with your gut and you have to do things that you honestly believe are going to work for you as an individual. We have an environment now which is very much focused on look at him or her and arrogantly saying to people, well, if they can do it, why can't you? And I think that's really, in a way it can be inspirational, but actually it can be really detrimental to people's development. Because if you're holding up the role models of the founders of some of the fantastic companies that we see in our media often, or the archetypal Richard Bransons of the world. They're fantastic individuals, and what they've done is without comparison. But by the very nature it's without comparison, it's really hard to get people to look at that and say, I can create the same thing. What people should do is look at the mistakes that they made, and let's be honest, most of us have made a huge amount of mistakes that don't often get talked about, but look at the mistakes they've made, because I guarantee you're likely to make those again. And if you can learn from mistakes, you can then create your own path, which is the way to do it for me. So in the next 5 or 10 years, I'd love to stay married. I'd love to stay happy by my household. But with all the activities I'm doing around empowering other people to create their own ways of life, there's a lot of tension on time. So I'm spending a lot of time, particularly in and around Africa. I was working with the British Council recently in Ghana to talk to entrepreneurs out there about how they're doing work. And we're hoping to get Humaniq introduced into the African continent as well as doing a lot of work here in the UK, working with institutions like the British Library, and also working with organisations who are helping more young people, like the School of Social Entrepreneurs and others who are helping young people to start their own businesses. So there's a huge amount I'm going to continue to give into what makes my heart feel good about helping others. But at the same time, we've got a number of business things that we have to focus on, particularly Humaniq, because we're in that startup phase after doing a very successful initial coin offering, where we now have to delight our clients who have trusted us on that particular journey. So it's about finding reliable partnerships with individuals and countries who are willing to help us to actually get this off the ground and make the test case a reality. And it's also about finding ways that we can work with more individuals, about empowering them with technology to participate in the financial markets. So for me, there's going to be a huge amount of time spent in building up the brand of Humaniq and working alongside the team in order to make that happen. So I think we're in a very interesting time in our development. Everybody's talking about the developments of technology and the way of the world. We're wrapped up in what's going to happen with post-Brexit, what's going to happen with society, what is society going to look like, is technology going to be taken over by the computers? I think we have to forget those arguments and focus actually on what is the essence of human condition, which is actually about finding connections with people and empowering and helping them to be better. If we can keep that at the heart of it, I think what we're doing with Humaniq and Banking 4.0 around completely disrupting the way that the banking system potentially can work to the benefit of the majority of people, at the heart of that is always, how do we connect with people to make them better than they were yesterday? And for me, that's always been at the heart of business. So if we can continue to focus on making things better, be that making trains go faster as they did with the steam engine, or making computers go quicker as we have had over the last 10 years with processors. Now, the aim for me is, how do we make this world that we live in, that we all live in under the global flag of the world, better by using technology for good? Humaniq is a small cog in that, but it's going to make a huge difference to over 2 billion people. That for me is why I'm very excited about what the future holds.